Hi everybody, welcome to our second CAD training. So I'm probably going to talk a little bit faster than I did last time, which is fine. And so you can just rewind or rewatch anything if you ever need to do that. And I'll also show you some resources if you need help or if you want to go over keyboard shortcuts. So today we'll be making a plate, pocketing, creating a drawing, and making a small assembly. First of all, you're going to click this create button up here and go on to document. And this is of course after you've logged into Onshape. So naming is, as I mentioned last time, very important because you can navigate your document, you can understand the purpose of your parts, you can communicate effectively, and you can organize your exports. And by exports, I mean if you save it into your computer, it's going to have the same name as you had in Onshape, which is going to be really easy if you organize it in advance. So now I'm going to name this Gearbox CAD 2 tutorial. And this effectively communicates its purpose. And if you don't remember something, there's this little drop-down menu with the question mark in the upper right-hand corner. There's a help thing, which is basically tells you everything you could ever need to know about every tool in Onshape. And there's a learning center because Onshape provides its own tutorials. There's also feature script, which you'll probably learn about at some point during build season. And then there's keyboard shortcuts, which are really useful because then you don't have to find the button every time. What you're going to do now is make the plate in your part studio. So click this sketch button, and then you'll click, I like to use the top plane. Then you'll find top on your cube in the upper right-hand corner, and that'll reorient your view. So now you have kind of a piece of paper. So you'll click this corner rectangle, and you'll click on the origin. I like to have things on the origin just so it defines itself. And then you're going to make this 5.5. And this 4.5. And if you don't remember, the dimension tool is up here. It's this little arrow thing. So now you have a fully defined rectangle. And you know it's fully defined because it's black. So now what you'll do is you'll click this center point circle, or you can always click C. And then you'll find the midpoint, which, as I said last time, finding the midpoint of something is just you go along until you find this little box in the middle, and this little kind of character will appear that looks like a point. And then, And then what you'll do is, as I mentioned, as I just demonstrated, you don't want to click there. So now you'll kind of go down, and as long as that little box is highlighted and there's a line going to your mouse, you can click, and now you have a circle. And then you can drag it up and down, but you can't drag it side to side. So it's centered horizontally, but not vertically. So now what you'll want to do is use the dimension tool, and you'll click on your outer edge of your circle, and you'll make that 1.125 in diameter. And then instead of clicking the center point, you'll click the bottom edge, and you'll dimension that from bottom edge to bottom edge of the rectangle to be 1.5 inches, which is very close to what I already had it to. Is it fully constrained? Yes, because it's all black. So now what you want to do is you click the center point circle again, and then don't make it on the corner, make it somewhere inside the corner. And then let's make this 0.1875, which is the diameter of a screw we have in our shop. It's probably the most common screw size in our shop. Then from edge to bottom edge, then I get a 1/4 inch, so 0.25. And then you'll do that again from edge to side edge. So now we have this circle. But instead of making this circle in all 3 other corners, you can just mirror it. And what I mean by that is you can kind of reflect it across a line. So what we're going to use as these lines is construction geometry. What construction geometry is it's ignored when making your sketch into a 3D part, so it's just used as a reference. So this is the construction button, and usually you'll have another tool selected, like say the line, and then you go over to construction, and now you can make a construction line. So, and I like to use keyboard shortcuts, so I'm going to use L for line, and construction is Q. So you already have this midpoint, so what you're going to do is just click on that, and then go straight down, and it should automatically make it vertical for you. And then see how it wants to make another line for you. Since you're not going to be making another line from this point, you can just click the escape button, and that kind of deselects all your tools. So now you're going to make another construction line using LQ or click on these tools. And then you're going to find the midpoint of this side. And then, as you can see, it has it on the midpoint of this other side as well. And then you'll just click escape again. So now you have kind of 4 perfectly symmetrical quadrants of this rectangle. So now what you'll want to do is click this mirror tool. And first it'll ask you to select a line and then select an entity, which is just a thing in your sketch, any thing. So you don't want to click the point, you want to click the circle because that's the thing you actually want to be replicated. So now you have that, and then you'll click the escape button, and you'll click mirror again, and then you can click this horizontal line. And since you have both, you can do that. And this is only meant for things that are supposed to be symmetrical. So if you wanted this hole to be in here, then you wouldn't be able to do that because it wouldn't, the mirror tool would have no purpose in doing that. So now what you want to do is always remember to click the green check mark after you finish a sketch or, so let's say, an extrude. So now you'll click on the extrude button or Shift E, and then you'll click on your face here. And then in this depth field, you want to make it 0.25, which just means 1/4 of an inch thick. So you'll click that check mark. And then generally on parts like plates, you'll want to use the fillet tool, which just looks like a curved corner here. And you'll click on these 4 kind of corner edges. And then if you right click and drag, that's how you get it to kind of rotate. And then if you control right click and drag, that's how you get it to pan. So now you want to make sure you have all 4 corners. And I like to use 0.25 because it's just a nice number. So then you'll click the green check mark and you have a part. Now what I'd like you to remember is naming. So you have the name of your overall file, which includes all of these Part Studios assemblies or any folders you might have down here. And then this Part Studio, you can technically make multiple parts in this Part Studio. So all the individual parts will show up here. And another Part Studio we're going to make is a Hex Shaft. So you probably just name that one Hex Shafts. And then you could make all your different Hex Shafts in one just to keep them together. But in this case, we just want it to be we just want it to be one thing. So we'll name this one Gearbox Plate. And since it is just one thing, we'll also name this part in here Gearbox Plate. Now what you do is you click this little plus button, which now you can add kind of a new little file in your menu here. So you can create a Part Studio. And then we'll go ahead and name that Hex Shaft. Because in reality, on the team, you would probably be making quite a few Hex Shafts in CAD. So now you're going to click the Sketch button, top, and don't forget to reorient with your little cube in the corner. So now you'll use your Inscribe Polygon tool and click on the origin. You'll either click to the side or up just to make it easier to define. I like to use up because due to the angle, it's easier to mate in an assembly. So now you'll click, and that little number will appear. If you were to move your mouse, that number would change, and it would change the number side. We want it to be 6, so we'll just keep it here. And now we'll I like to dimension this circle instead of having to go across, because you can dimension two entities apart from each other, but I just like to use the circle. So we'll make that 0.5, and it obviously got quite a bit smaller. So we'll zoom in, and then you'll make this circle, which will be kind of the hole for the bolt to go through, because we're using this to attach two of our gearbox plates. So now we'll dimension this to be 0.1875. So now it's fully defined, so we can finish our sketch with the green check mark. And now we have this little hexagon. We can click on that face and click extrude. And then we want this one to be 1.5 inches long. So go to the depth field and type in 1.5. And I'm not just using random numbers here. So let's look at this part as an example. Most hex shafts we have are 1/2 inch across. And to find length in Onshape, you can click this. So now you know the length of this one line is down here. And then you can also have show measure details. And then if you were to click another line, it shows the distance between 2 points. So in the event that you have kind of, let's say you have a point over here and then a point over here, it would show all those different ways you can measure it down here. So let's exit out of that. And then to deselect everything, you can just click space. And then a very common screw size in our shop is 1032, which is 0.19 inches in diameter. And this is 0.1875, which is very close. And then 1.5 is approximately the amount of space between the plates in your gearbox I've actually made. So that's what this is for. Now, let's move on to our assembly. So usually, if you were doing this, you'd create a new assembly. But since we have a very small file, you're just going to go to assembly 1. Now we're going to go ahead and name this gearbox assembly. And you never want to name, you never want to leave something unnamed, because that'll get confusing later. So now you go to this insert button, and you'll click your gearbox plate and your hex shaft, which just inserts them. And you don't have to, a lot of people like to click and then put it in there, and click and put it in there. You don't necessarily have to do that. And this isn't actually supposed to. You can also drag your parts around. So now what I want you to do is use fasten. You're going to scroll into the bottom of this, and instead of having it on this face like I do, see all these little dots? That means it's actually the face. What I want you to do is highlight just this circle, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And you want the colorful icon to be in the actual center of that. So now you'll kind of scroll out, and then you'll show the top of, you can really use any corner. So now use this circle, and you'll want to highlight that edge. So I like to click solve just to make sure everything looks right, but generally really small assemblies, solve won't do much, but I'd like to make it a habit. So if you can do that, go ahead and do that. So now we could just take this and insert it 3 more times, or you could just replicate it, which is this little pegboard looking thing up here. So now we click on the thing we want to make multiple times, and it has match edges on face, and that is why I had to click specifically the edge. So it's going to only find the circles that are the same dimension as the thing you already mated it to. So if I had just done with the face, then it would have said, oh, you want to mate it to all circles. So it would have done this big one too. And it really wouldn't be an issue in this one because you could just delete that one. But if we have a more complex part, like say the plate on the side of our shooter, it has a lot of holes, and it would probably be even more time consuming just to go through and make sure you only have one on all the holes you want. So now you'll find this little red, you'll see this little red field, and you click on that and it'll turn blue, which shows that now you want to select stuff for that field. Then you'll click on that face, and as you see, it replicates all of those, and if you drag it around, they will stay. So Control C and Control V work in here too. So you're just going to select this, Control C and Control V. And this time when you made it, you'll want to make it to corresponding corners just because it goes on a specific way. So, and this time it doesn't really matter whether you choose the edge or the face as long as this icon is in the correct place. So now since I'm on this corner, I want to use this hex shaft. So then you'll click the green check mark, and now you have your assembly. Next, I'd like to talk about pocketing, which is basically when you remove material in strategic places so that the part kind of remains structurally sound, mechanically sound, I should say. It prevents a thing called Operation Swiss Cheese, where your team near the end of build season realizes, oh no, our robot's overweight because there is a weight limit. And so they start just drilling holes, and there's no pattern to it, and that's very bad. So this keeps us under weight limit while still making our part fully functional. Now, go back to your plate, and instead of just picking a plane, you're going to click Sketch and then click onto its surface. And then don't forget to reorient your view. So now, you can use this little offset tool here, and then you could just click around all the edges, but what I like to do is if I'm using the face of the whole part, just click on the face of the whole part. And this arrow should start pointing inward. If not, just drag it inward. Then you can either click out here or just press enter, and the little field will come up for you to enter a number. If it's not 0.25, make it 0.25, and if it already is, just press enter, and then it'll be good. So now I'd like to talk about breaking a sketch, which is when, and don't actually do this, I'll just show you what happens. See, your sketch turns red and little red icons appear. First of all, don't freak out. Just Control Z, which is the undo button, and try whatever you're trying to do again, because maybe you just accidentally click something, you don't even realize it. But usually you have kind of a conflicting constraint you put on it. So I'll show you what I did here. So this is the coincident tool that means that you always want two things to be touching, such as this point and this point. But the offset tool we used earlier says that this line will always be 1/4 of an inch from this line. And so these points can never touch. And so I've told it two completely different things. So that's why it breaks. Now you'll want to create a border around each hole. I like to use offset for this. You could technically make a hole over each one, but this kind of just streamlines the process. And you can't select multiple at once because it's not technically like a single chain, as Onshape puts it. So it's basically not a closed loop, if you think about it. And then you'll press enter, and you'll want that to be 0.25. So you just go ahead and do that for each circle. And then for this big circle in the middle, since it's kind of a more load-bearing part, I would say 0.5, just to be safe. And then next, we are going to use construction geometry. So I want you to click LQ on your keyboard, which gives you a construction line. And I want to, instead of just using the center point or somewhere random, use this corner from the offset, and then you'll go to the center, and then you'll do that on each corner. So once you do that, it should be fully defined. And now because you went to each corner, you kind of completed that closed loop needed for an offset. So now you have kind of these 4 triangles. They make 4 areas of the sketch. So now you can just click on each one of these and see how I have it construction. You don't want it to be construction. You want these little blue lines to be solid. So see how this starts on the outside? You're always going to want this to be on the inside of that triangle you just highlighted. So you'll click enter, and then you'll want it to be 0.25, because then if that's on each side, that'll add up to be 1/2 inch, which is about what we want. So go ahead and do that. And sometimes it'll end up inside already, and sometimes it'll end up outside. You just want to make sure that it ends up inside. See, so this did it again. So and now you should have something that looks like this. So then you'll have these 4 little regions here where it's not really, this material is really not supporting much. So now you want to click the green check mark and we're going to remove this material. The extrude button just doesn't just add material, it also removes material. So you're going to go to this remove tab and you'll click these little regions that aren't really supporting much. And then there's a little drop down menu under the word blind. You'll just go through all since this is the only part in the part studio. And it should look like this. And you'll just click your green check mark. And now if you think about it, this part will end up being made out of metal. And how we do that is we have a CNC, which is basically just a giant table with a drill bit coming over it. So if you think about the drill bit coming in this way, a drill bit has a diameter, it's round, so you're never going to get these perfect corners. So the machine just won't take that. So now you'll want to use the fillet tool, which is Shift F. It looks like this little rounded corner. And you'll want to go to each of these inside edges and just go ahead and fillet them. And there's also something called a feature script for this, where it makes it a lot quicker in the event that you want all of your inside edges to be filleted, or I should say all of the edges on the part. But feature script is kind of a little more advanced than I wanted to go. So if you'd like to learn more about feature script, that is in the help menu over here. It's basically a way for Onshape users to program their own tools if they think that they could streamline the process of CAD more. And I like I said, I like to use 0.25 just because it's a nice number. So now you have this pocketed part and it would be ready for the CNC. So if you go back, Onshape kind of, all CAD software should do this, but at least Onshape, it automatically updates the part that you already have in your assembly. So now you have this pocketed part in your assembly. So now I'll show you how to get it ready for the laser cutter, which is something that a lot of people ask you to do. Getting it ready for the CNC is a little more complex, but the laser cutter is something we use to prototype first before we actually start making it out of metal. So you're going to click the little plus button, and then you go to create drawing. And then you'll want to, if this doesn't show up, you'll want to click ANSI, and you'll have a little D here. That's the one that you want to use, especially for bigger parts. You could get away with the A and B and C or whatever for this particular part, but we just like to use D. So now an insert menu should come up, and you're going to click on that gearbox plate drop down, and you'll click on that part in that menu. And depending on what plane you originally set your sketch in, you're going to need to go over here and probably click top if you've been doing exactly what I've been doing. So now you're going to click, and that's going to put that in here. And then see how this little box follows you around? This feature is technically used for engineering drawings, so that's what it's going to do. But you're going to click the escape button because we're using it for a different purpose. And all this stuff up here, the laser cutter would actually try to cut this out. So we're going to need to drag this off to the side of the paper, and you'll zoom out, and you'll highlight your entire paper, and everything should turn orange, and you'll just click backspace. So now you just have this blank sheet of paper. Then what you want to do is you'll drag this up to the corner, and you'll put this as closely to the corner as you can. You'll want to leave a little room, so you can't just do this. You'll want to leave it about here, because if you just put it somewhere in the center, you're going to be wasting wood. You'll be wasting materials. So now you have your drawing, and don't forget to name it something like laser cut gearbox plate. And I like to capitalize things just for standard's sake. So now you'll enter that, and now you have something that you could turn into a PDF, and then you'd put that into the computer and send that to the laser cutter. But for now, we're just going this far. So thank you so much for coming. Hopefully this has been very informative. Hopefully you've learned how to streamline your process more with stuff such as pocketing and replicate, which are all very useful. And just as a reminder, in any document, you can go to this help menu, and you can also go to the Learning Center, which provides, as it says, courses and training resources. And I believe in the comment section of this video, we will put some links to a Google Doc that I have made, and that will give you all kinds of resources to learn how to CAD. So thank you for coming, and have a fantastic day.